Welcome to Get to Know with me, Morgan Williams. I've been in the creative industry for over a decade and meet people in different roles every day. But here's my secret. I don't always know what it is they actually do. So here I am getting to know. Each week, I sit down with industry insiders, learning what it is they actually do all day long. Whether you're trying to break into the industry, feeling a little bit lost, or just plain curious, Get to Know is here to dish out creative career insights and advice. So let's dive right into this episode. This week, I get to know Leah Whitty, a freelance photographer who photographs a range of subjects, from fashion to beauty to travel to yoga, the list goes on. I'm particularly excited for this one as I met Leah back at ASOS when we were both working in their still life studios around 7 years ago. From there, she's gone on to build herself an amazing freelance career that takes her all around the world, whilst also helping out at the John Lewis Studios and running her own yoga mat business, Palms in the Wild. Let's get into it. So thanks for joining me today, Leah. Really nice to have you on.
No problem. It's an absolute pleasure to be invited to come onto your podcast. Very exciting.
Good. No, I'm really glad to have you on. I think it's a really interesting one because you do lots of different types of photography. So maybe we could start with that. Can you tell us how you sort of juggle all of the different types of photography you do? Because I know it's like travel, lifestyle, and fashion, among sort of some other things as well.
Yeah.
How do you go about getting all of those different jobs and like having your day be so different every single day?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's definitely something that is just my personality a lot of the time, because when I talk to other photographers, they are like, whoa, you do so many different things. And for me, I love the variety. I think when I studied photography, I was studying fashion, and I was drawn to fashion because it felt very creative and very kind of like boundaryless in terms of what you can do in terms of creating really exciting imagery. So that was my starting point. And then I very quickly got into still life photography. And that's when I sort of ignited my interest in technical photography. And I really love lighting and kind of making an image really kind of perfected. So both those elements, traditionally photographers kind of pick one or the other. But I assisted food photographers. I got a lot of different experience quite early on, and I think that helped open my eyes to actually what different kind of forms of photography there are available. And in a lot of ways it made it very difficult for me to choose one avenue, because I could kind of see pros and cons to all these different forms. Anyway, I then started to get into a lot of traveling, so I love travel photography, kind of more reportage style stuff, but it always felt to me like the most promise for work and money, effectively earning a living, is through fashion, because it's, you know, more commercial and there's a lot more job opportunities within studios. So that's an area I really kind of went hard on, and trying to get as much experience as possible. And then from there, I suppose I sort of made my way around some full-time jobs. I had an opportunity to work for a furniture company at one point, and that led me to travel a lot. So that gave me more interest in the travel side of things. But effectively, I always came back to London knowing that the work was often in e-commerce, in fashion, and, you know, product photography. So that gave me the chance to get more into technical photography and lighting. And, you know, I kind of just saw the other bits as a bit of a hobby, because I am fortunate enough to do, you know, my love, my passion as my job. And that's really cool. But at the same time, you don't always get paid to do the types of photography that you want to do all the time. So I use travel as a way to enjoy photography in my own way, kind of thing. And I actually have my own...
Yeah, that's such a good idea.
Yeah, and like I actually separate the two things quite a lot by having kind of my fun camera that I take traveling, and that's, I wouldn't use that on jobs, and then I have my professional cameras that I just use purely for work. So yeah, kind of that sort of happened. And then as time's gone on, when I've been back to freelance, obviously that's given me so much freedom to work in loads of different areas. And I think I'm the kind of person who says a lot it says yes to a lot of things, and I, even if I'm like, oh, that's maybe not my thing, I see a lot of benefit in going for it anyway, because you always learn something from all the different things that you try. And certainly traveling has made me a lot, more flexible and open-minded to what you can experience when you just say yes and give it a go. So yeah, from there I've got into all kinds of things, really. I honestly don't think there's many types of photography I haven't tried. I did event photography back in the day, and I've done weddings. I've decided that's not really my thing, to be honest. And I know there's so many amazing photographers who are great at it, and that's one area that I'm like, okay, I'm happy to leave that to the pros in that area. But in most other aspects, I will try and give things a go, and I see it as a bit of a challenge. If it's an area that I don't know too well, but like, let's see what I can do, because being a creative, you need to challenge yourself sometimes, and you can get very comfortable doing the same thing very often. So I just try and keep that open-minded. So yeah, now I'd say I'm at a point in my career where I'm loving doing yoga shoots and yoga retreats, and that's because I love yoga, and I've just met yoga teachers who've found out I'm a photographer, and that's opened up loads of doors to go abroad. I've been to India this year. I've got Bali coming up in a couple of weeks as well for retreats, and that's amazing. Yeah, and like that's something that, interestingly, I tried really hard to get into a couple of years ago, and I didn't get anywhere with it. And it goes to show that sometimes, you put something out there, something you want to try, you sometimes try really hard and it doesn't really work out, but then you just don't know when those kind of dots will join together later on. And that seems to have happened now, like quite effortlessly. I've like kind of just fallen into doing a lot of those bits and bobs now, which is great because I'm freelance again and I can, put them into my schedule wherever possible.
Yeah. Can we go back a little bit? You mentioned the furniture company that I guess started you off a little bit on the travel photography because you got to travel a lot with them.
Yeah.
Was that Swoon Editions?
Yes, that was. You've done your research.
What? Of course, I've done my research. So where were they based? Were they based abroad or were they based in the UK?
They were based in Borough in London. So I was in the office now and again, but the job predominantly was based abroad because the way their business structure worked is that they would have warehouses abroad and we would need to photograph the products within those spaces. So that was another really kind of exciting and challenging job to have because I had to sort of make a studio work in sometimes very dusty environments, sometimes very tricky areas of a factory and things like that. So yeah, that was a very interesting job, and I was very fortunate to travel a lot and get to see lots of different places. And for sure, when you've got all your camera kit with you, you want to take photos as much as possible. And I was there during Holi for one of the trips in India, so that's just a photographer's dream, really. It's so much color everywhere and exciting kind of India explosion of everything, really.
That's so cool. So did they obviously they took you over there to shoot it? Did they take the rest of the team, like stylists and all of that, over as well?
Yeah, so I would always travel with a stylist, and they were like interior stylists. They would be on the same trips with me. Sometimes I went with another photographer as well, and we would share the workload between us. And then one of us would go to one country, say Vietnam, the other one would go to China, and we would kind of navigate it separately, but in very, very small teams.
Right. Okay. And then you went from there into ASOS, am I right?
So actually, I went freelance after that job. And that was at a time in my life where I was just starting to explore travel a lot more. And I've been very lucky, like growing up as a family, we always went away like every year somewhere. My parents tried to make it abroad a lot of the time, especially in our kind of late teens, early 20s and things like that. So I've always been very excited about travel, but that job definitely kickstarted my like interest further because I kind of saw all these different countries and how amazing all of them are, and I just like, I wanted to do more of it. I was properly addicted at that point. So I was freelance for a year after that. At that point, I was working a lot at Harvey Nichols' studio. So
Okay, cool.
so they were amazing. They always gave me loads of work, and I did lots of other bits and bobs during that time as well. I think that was a lot of the events I used to shoot back then as well, so I'd fit that in now and again. And then after that, I kind of thought, I need to go away for a while, and I went to Australia. So that was so then I went to Australia for a year, and did some traveling, did some work. I actually had one of my wildest jobs out there, where I was a photographer, working for, like, it was honestly the worst paid job I've ever done. And I thought I would walk into Australia and get these really cool studio jobs, but unfortunately they often look at your visa and see you're a backpacker, and they're like, no, we know you're just going to leave in a couple of months. So my idea of kind of walking straight into the studio didn't kind of go into plan. But it's interesting because, again, I was like, I'm open-minded. I was based in Sydney at the time, and I got a job to be a very touristy photographer for like Madame Tussauds, the wildlife centre, sea life.
Oh my gosh,
yeah. And I was told in my interview that I was the most experienced person they'd ever had, and but the bar was pretty low. Like, most of my team didn't know how to work a camera.
oh wow,
And it was
okay.
it was like green screen stuff and everything. But again, I learned a lot actually in that job, and some of those skills I could still put into use these days, in terms of like managing groups of people and like making them feel comfortable in a photo. Those sorts of things as a photographer are really, really hard. I actually think they're harder than the technical side sometimes, because you're like an actor. You have to be like, full of energy and happy, and if someone feels uncomfortable in front of the camera, then you can almost guarantee your photos aren't going to come out particularly well, not to their full potential. So and then I did some really random jobs out there as well. I worked on a boat for a while, and I took photos of the people on the boats, and like up in the Whitsundays and things, and I just did everything really. So it was after that
Amazing way to see it all as well, though, like Whitsundays and sort of just traveling around Australia, like such a good opportunity.
It wasn't the most glamorous, but I was like in my mid-20s. I thought, well, I could think, oh, I'm better than this. I have more experience from London. But actually, in a country that is quite far behind us as an industry, actually, I realized that, what, I'm here to travel, I'm here to experience things. And if this is the way that I earn a little bit of money and get to travel and get to experience things, then great. And I made some great friends during those times, and had a lot of laughs. So no regrets. But yeah, after that, I got back to London. I thought, right, I'll take my career very seriously now, and that's when I started ASOS. And I was freelancing for a bit at the beginning, but they were my favorite client to work for. So and that's how we met.
Yes. No, because we met and it was still kind of split, because you were in the still life studio and that's where I started as well.
Yeah.
But then sort of over time it got more and more merged, so you were shooting a lot more model every day, as well as a bit of still life here and there. Did you kind of have a favourite at that time, shooting still life? Like, I know it was like accessories and bags, jewelry and that kind of stuff, and then model, and then I thought in particular you were really, really good at the beauty. Did you have a favourite?
Yeah, well, 100% it ended up being beauty. Like, I absolutely love shooting beauty, and getting really involved in the textures, and like that's always been something that I've loved doing, and doing those really close-up swatches, and just making everything really come to life with makeup. It's just, I've always loved doing that. And I think that wasn't actually originally too obvious. I think when I first started there, I was just loving, again, the variety of everything. Like, it's pretty amazing to be in such a fast moving brand that, you're one day shooting some jewelry, then some shoes, and then some handbags, then you're on the model, then you're doing some makeup, then you're doing, at that time we had a lot of like homeware stuff. We were doing room sets and things like that. So yeah, it was really good fun to do that. And then over time, I really got into the beauty side of things, and just wanted to do more and more. And I think it was when James gave me the opportunity to shoot the Huda stuff for their when they
Yes, I remember
collaborated
that.
with Huda, and he asked me to shoot that, and I was like really, really excited about that because we didn't get many opportunities to shoot beauty on models at that time. So to do the whole branding photography for that was like a great opportunity, and for sure led me to want to do a lot more of that sort of thing.
Yeah, that shoot was really, really cool. Didn't you do video for that as well?
Yeah, we had it all going on actually. It was really cool, like very candy flossy vibes, very pink and glam,
Yeah.
and yeah, a lot of fun, and we had amazing models. So the whole shoot just felt like a big production, and yeah, they were doing lots of social media stuff on it as well at the time.
Yeah, I remember that. It was a really, really cool shoot. I think I worked in hair and makeup then as well, so it was nice
Yeah,
to kind of get involved from that aspect. Um, but
absolutely.
yeah, I think ASOS is like one of those brands that I'd really recommend people actually try and work for, because like I learned so much there. Like you said,
Yeah,
it's so fast paced.
yeah.
And
Oh,
like, I know like the
so good.
photographers. Say
Sorry.
that again.
It's a like proper skill to learn that level of resilience and like just pace and everything. Yeah, it's really, really good. I still to this day, like I don't think I've worked anywhere at that pace. No way.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And like for the photography, like you said, you were shooting something different every single day, but they also got you doing video at one point.
Yeah.
Do you still do video now?
That's a very interesting question. I will be honest and say I don't encourage it into my work. I
Hmm.
personally I know some amazing videographers, and I just don't think that I am that person for that job. And I'm very happy again, like I'm happy to give things a go, and I do see it as a good challenge. Um but I wouldn't I'm just learning video is a completely different realm to photography. And a lot of clients, they don't really understand that because they just think it's visuals, how they're very transferable, they're very related, but they come from two very different mentalities. To have your whole career thinking in stills, you want to communicate everything in one still image, or you want to have that all that narrative packed into one still image, to then think about motion and storyboarding and how you make that into a flow of a story is a very different mentality. And it's not something that I would say comes naturally to me after being a photographer for
Hmm.
10 plus years. And so yeah, it's I'd never say never, but right now I don't personally think that that's something I would do. And interestingly, I've dabbled with it in two very different ways. One, I've got into using a drone a lot recently, so that's something.
Oh,
Yeah, so like on retreats and things like that, I've always absolutely loved aerial photography. Like I've always loved, again, textures and things like that, so they tie in together very well. And I thought I'm just gonna get a drone last year. Like if I hate it, I hate it, but I'll give it a go. And I bought it honestly just purely for stills because I like, really graphic looking abstract images. But it's
yeah.
very hard not to play with video when you're using a drone because it's so much fun. And you're flying a drone, why wouldn't you video that? But then what I found was that I would have all these videos, and I don't know how to deal with them. I'm not a video editor. So then I started to learn a little bit about video editing. But I wouldn't say I'm at any sort of pro level at all. Like for me, it's just good fun, and it's something that I will offer to the clients, but I won't, charge to those professional levels because I'm like, I'm not a professional. I'm learning. This is something that I
Hmm.
love to add to my kind of skill set, but I am fully learning. I'm doing a course at the moment, actually. So I'm hoping I can start to really develop those skills a lot
Oh,
more.
cool.
Yeah, and it's really good fun. It's like properly, you're learning to be a pilot and a photographer, a videographer, a weatherman, to be honest, weatherwoman. Because you gotta really read the wind and all of that. And yeah, it's a really, really fun challenge. So I'll be taking that to Bali with me. Um
Oh, amazing. No, I really want to talk about the yoga retreats actually, because I think that's such an interesting part of what you do in particular.
Yeah.
So you said earlier that you met just like yoga instructors, and that's sort of how you started getting those jobs. Could you tell me a bit more? How did that really come about?
Yeah, so I had my favorite yoga studio in Battersea, which sadly no longer exists anymore. But I used to go to that class very regularly, and there was a teacher called Marta there who I loved her classes, and I don't know, she's a super friendly, warm person. So she just got chatting to me after class one day, and funnily enough, I know we're going to get onto this later, but I was using one of my yoga mats that I designed, and she was asking me loads of questions about it. I was like, well, I designed it; it's my own photograph. Da, 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 da. And she was like, wow, that's amazing. You're a photographer. Okay, cool. And she's a very business minded yoga teacher. And she's very smart in the way that she promotes herself. And she's just, yeah, always looking for good opportunities as well, I think. And she just said, oh, would you mind if, like, can I hire you to take some photos of me for social media? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I wasn't even sure how to go about making that work, but I just figured it out. And we started doing some shoots together, and she just absolutely loved it, and she's just been singing my praises to all her yoga friends basically, and honestly
Oh,
is
nice.
all through recommendations. She has created a whole other land for me that I never saw coming, and it's something that I've wanted, but it just goes to show, and it is such an annoying phrase, but it is so much to do with who you know, and goes to show how much networking and just being sociable is quite important in our jobs, because she's recommended me to so many teachers, and all the teachers that I now have taken photos with are recommendation, and it's a domino effect completely. I've been asked to do
Yeah.
some like a yoga festival in July. Oh, two different teachers, and they want some drone stuff as well. So it's really cool. Like, it's really opening doors. So yeah, that's basically how it came about.
No, it's interesting as well that you mentioned about the networking, because that's been a bit of a common theme through quite a few of the interviews that I've done for the podcast now. Like, not just with photography as well, like for stylists and then getting freelancers into studios. I feel like a lot of it seems like a really big industry, but actually when you're in it, I think it's quite small and everyone actually
Yeah.
knows each other.
Absolutely. And that
So,
has become more and more apparent as a freelancer. And I was thinking this very recently because I was asked to do a job for someone who I haven't had contact with in years, really. And we weren't super close or anything. We were professionally working together. And I got asked to do a shoot for her, well, for the brand that she works with. And I thought, oh, that's incredible. Like, that's amazing how she's even thought of me. I wonder how that even came on her radar. But yeah, these things, it is like you say, it's a small industry, and I think if you know someone who is particularly good at something or particularly interested in something, it narrows that even more. And there's for sure photographers that I would recommend to people where I'm like, oh, that's not actually so much my thing, but I know someone who's amazing at that. I've got a lot of friends who are photographers, and like I would point them off in different directions if it was something that I didn't feel like I was able to do, or if it was more their specialism.
I
And
think that's amazing as well that you can help each other out. Like, because I
yeah,
think when you're in the industry as well, you get to know a lot of people.
yeah,
So it's nice that you can help someone out if you're not available, but also if you just don't feel like it's your thing. Like you said, it's nice that
yeah.
you kind of as well just like can say those things and not feel like you have to take every single job as well, because I know as being a freelance sometimes there's like a little bit of worry about work coming in.
Yeah.
um how have you got it to that point that you can kind of pick and choose the jobs?
Some of it is purely down to my availability, and I can honestly say I work so much harder as a freelancer than I did as a full timer, because the work never ends. I've got editing to do after work when I'm in a studio for a day. I've got jobs that I need to do quotes for. There is always something to do. And I do try and balance that as much as possible. But I think I wouldn't say I'm going around like, rejecting tons of work or anything like that. I think I'm in a very lucky position that I am very busy right now, and I always think, oh, when it's quiet, I am very conscious to take breaks though, and I kind of have very firm boundaries on that, because I know what will keep me energetic and keep my cup filled, and that is to travel, that is to re-energize myself, keep myself creative and inspired. And actually, I think that the biggest lesson I would give to people, or advice, is I'd say, like, the more you cling on or worry to work, the more you'll struggle to find it. And that's obviously really annoying to hear and easy to say. But when I have been in that position when I was first freelance, like there are 100% times when, you're thinking, oh, when's the work going to turn up? And like, oh, this is a bit quiet at the moment. But that was 2 years ago, and I haven't thought about or worried about work in 2 years. And now I've said that out loud, that's actually really shocking. But
Touch wood, they continue like that as well for you.
absolutely. But like, I think the way that I try and balance it is like, you've got to keep yourself reinventing yourself. Don't get too comfortable just doing one thing all the time, and always be looking for opportunities, but also be true to who you are and like what you're good at. A lot of the time you can, like you were asking, how do you pick what to say yes to, how do you pick what you say no to? But often, if you were to actually be a bit more true to what you're good at and what you're excited about, that leaves room for more of that, and then you can pass on those other bits, if that was the case, if if there was something you didn't feel excited or comfortable to do. And I don't do that honestly ever really, but I have found that since I followed the excitement, that has led to more work in that kind of way. So yeah,
I think that's really, really good advice, because you've got to be excited about what you're doing. And I think one of the best things about what you're doing with the travel is that's one of your passions. And it's like, yeah, you'll take breaks and you'll probably go on holidays and still take tons of photos, which actually can pad out your portfolio a little bit and maybe help you get jobs in the future. But it was done on one of your rest periods,
Absolutely. And I'm taking those photos without any kind of brief in mind, any idea of oh yeah, but you need to get this and get that. It's purely for myself. Oh, what do I fancy taking a photo of? If you remove those kind of restrictions and do something just because you enjoy it. And I think it's actually something that us in the Western world are particularly bad at, is just like having fun for the sake of having fun, just doing things because it's you enjoy it. Thinking we have to be productive. And don't get me wrong, as a photographer, I am thinking like, oh, but I have to make this the best, and got to get the best angles, get the most out of this opportunity. But I try and remove those kind of mentalities in my head, like, oh, but you have to get it like this and you have to go like that. I'm more like, I've got my camera, I'm just going to take some photos and see what happens. And often I don't look at those pictures honestly for months. I was looking through photos I took last year, when I literally a year ago, from Norway, Switzerland, somewhere else. Gosh, it was a lot of countries. And that they were really, really fun to come back to, because I just took them purely for enjoyment. And then that helps inform maybe where I want to take my work to next, because if I enjoy that lots, or I think, oh, maybe there's an opportunity in that I didn't see, it kind of keeps that enthusiasm going, I think.
Yeah. So you mentioned briefs just now. I'm so intrigued to kind of learn what sort of brief you get on like a yoga retreat. And do you use much equipment when you're shooting as well?
Yeah. I would say yoga retreats are like probably the nicest briefs that you could possibly get, because ultimately you just want to capture the overall feel of a retreat. And it's not an easy job, to be honest. Like I have to say, like, it sounds very relaxing, but you are very switched on all the time. I find it really hard to just like put down my camera and just think, okay, well, I can't be taking photos 24/7 when you're in a retreat. But if you see something that looks like a good photo opportunity, you're going to take it, and you're going to want to really capture that for the yoga teacher, so that, you know, her retreats are really captured to the best of what, well, because they're always amazing. So you don't want to, you know, you want to give that justice basically. But generally, like what we've done in the past is I'll work with the teacher on exactly what their kind of style is, because every teacher is very different. They all offer very different types of yoga, and their yoga mentality might be really varied, from, you know, very traditional to very modern. Like it might be a very fast paced kind of yoga teacher. It might be someone who's very focused on yin and nidras and things like that. And you really you kind of need to know the teacher quite well beforehand, just to understand, like, okay, who are they as a person, and like I want to represent them how they want to be represented, in a sense, doing like portrait photography but on a very larger level, and then professionally to represent them as well. So normally we will kind of have a list of things, so it'll be like some stage shots of them doing some yoga poses just for them, just so that you can see the yoga teacher on the retreat. You want to get shots of the groups, and you know, active shots of them in classes. But with that comes a lot of rules in a funny way, because I personally find the biggest thing to be aware of as a photographer is I hate feeling like an intruder. I want to be very much a part of the environment that I'm in. And if I feel like I'm disrupting someone or making them feel uncomfortable, I don't want to be that as a photographer. Like I'm very, very conscious of that. So in a yoga class, you know, people are probably a bit vulnerable, very relaxed, and hopefully very comfortable and enjoying their class. The last thing you want is for them to suddenly feel very self-conscious. So you know, I want to get those very natural shots, and I want to feel like more like a fly on a wall, or someone who is still involved in the class but not, you know, a photographer with the camera right in their face the whole time. So that's something I'm very aware of, and I won't be taking photos throughout the class all the time. I would never take photos during shavasana, when the class is relaxed, and, you know, they should be very much in their yoga headspace at that point. And then, you know, there's the shots of the retreat, the location, the venue. If there's any kind of treatments and things like that, we'll arrange with the venue to do some, like, maybe stage shots with someone who wants to volunteer. It's all about like very open communication with everyone, to make sure that not only the people in the photos are very clued up on what it's going to involve, you know, they get the vision, and then that's kind of applies to everyone involved, including the venue. And then what else? I always try and get shots of, you know, the food, the drinks, the vibe of the retreat. Always try and get any like wildlife, things like that, just to get like a really overall picture of what the retreat is. There's quite a big tick list, and I love doing starry photography, so I always try and get like a nice starry shot if the location's like particularly rural and amazing. So that's like a little extra offering on top of like the drone stuff as well. So I just try and capture as much as I can, basically.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into it that I hadn't even thought about. Like, a lot of different types of photography kind of rolled into one job.
And I think a lot of people might think, oh, what a dream. That sounds like almost quite easy as a job. But I do think it lends to my interest very well. And I actually don't know that a lot of photographers would want to do it, in the sense that, like, you do have to be interested in lots of different types of photography. And I think we were always really encouraged when I was training to like be very specific, and, you know, you should be this type of photographer or this type of photographer, which I understand. I think it's very important to have an identity in your work. But for me, I'm like, I don't want to pick. I like loads of different things, and there's actually a lot of benefit to being able to do a lot of different types.
Well, it definitely lends itself to this kind of job. And I think this kind of job as well, you can probably only really do it well if you're actually interested in the subject matter. So like you do yoga anyway, you understand how yoga works. Like you said, you'd never take pictures during shavasana, and like I do yoga as well, so like I completely get that, because if if I just heard like a click or something from the camera, it
Yeah.
might just completely throw you off.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I think that's really important as well, when you take jobs like this.
Yeah.
And the you know, the pictures of the wildlife I think is so cool as well, because I know that you do zoo photography for like London Zoo,
Yeah.
isn't it? I feel like that would be such a fun day out. But what are those jobs actually like?
So they are a lot of fun. They are very unpredictable. So you've got to be very go with the flow, which again, luckily I am quite I lean towards the go with the flow kind of mentality. But yeah, like shooting with London Zoo is absolutely amazing. They're one of my favorite clients to work with because I never know what I'm going to get. Sometimes I'm photographing the experiences, you know, we're feeding giraffes or we're making enrichment for animals and like digging out the, you know, clearing out the elephant pens, enclosures, and, you know, all those kind of things. And then you get ones where you're in the butterfly house. And then, you know, I was working with them on the weekend. We were making enrichment for the bears and they were just so much fun and they were just playing with ice cubes because it was a nice warm day. And yeah, and it's
Oh,
really interesting working with them because I also am working with people and animals, which are notoriously quite hard to work with. So
yeah,
really keeps
definitely.
you on your toes, and like you've got to be very alert a lot of the time to look out for those photo opportunities and like really positioning yourself in a way that, you know, is good for the animals and for the subject matter, whatever my brief is. And actually, I think that one has been really, or that client has been really good for a reminder of composition because you've got so
Mhm.
many moving parts in a photo. And coming from a studio background, you're actually very clear on positioning of things a lot of the time. And, you know, you can ask a model to be in a certain position. You can, you know, position still life things in a way that you want them to look. So the zoo is like a real like photographer on location kind of environment. um but yeah, that's all really good fun, and I've got a project I probably can't talk about yet that's coming up there, which is very exciting in a few weeks, and it ties in lots of my interests. So yeah, that's really cool.
Oh,
um
that's so cool. I know recently you did a night shoot with them as well.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you circled back to that because when we were talking about video, I had the two examples of the drone and this night shoot. So I had this brief to photograph the animals at night, and I thought, well, how am I going to do that? You know, you're very restricted with a normal SLR camera. There's only so much I can push my ISO when it's pitch black. So
Yeah.
you can't use lights because they're animals, you can't use flash. I thought, okay, how am I going to do this? And again, it was like an amazing challenge because I had to look into photographers who take photos of animals at night. And, you know, sometimes a lot of the research was coming up with, you know, animals in safari and things where they've got like this incredible night sky of stars behind them. They're getting a bit of light coming in from somewhere. And I thought, well, I don't really have any control over all of that. After all, it's London. It's not going to
Mhm.
be
Yeah,
stars.
very different environment.
Actually, sorry, this was actually at Whipsnade Zoo. It wasn't London, all part of ZSL. But
Okay.
um, so you could potentially get a really nice starry night there, but the weather, who knows? So I was like, okay, I can't really get too fixated on that as a concept. So then I started to think about, well, what about night vision camera? And that is, I'm still yet to know definitively if you can't get a night vision stills camera. But from the research that I did, it was kind of best to do video, and then take stills from the video camera. So
Oh, interesting.
yeah, and I thought, well, I don't know anything about night vision cameras, especially video, but I thought, well, I'll give it a go, you know, I'll give it a try. And luckily, the team I was working with were very open-minded and up for kind of experimenting. So that was really great. And I thought to protect myself a little bit, I'll get a really good lens. um, and shoot some stuff at dusk on my normal SLR as kind of like, right, well, I've got some backup images that are there at dusk. I know I can get shots out of this camera. I know my kit well enough to do that. But that hopefully all goes well with the video camera. And actually I was amazed with the results. I was it was really tough using the video camera. Like, I obviously didn't know much about it beforehand. I did like some trials, and then when it came to the day, it was pouring with rain. So like I was like, how am I going to get anything out of this? And the camera's actually infrared, so it works better when you're in close range to the animals. So some of the animals were really tricky to capture when you're using a camera that really relies on you being close, and obviously you can't get close to certain animals. So it was very challenging, and in the end, like, I really enjoyed the process of understanding this new file type I've never tried before, and how I work with a video. How do I pick out the best stills from it? And there was some like really interesting creative concepts behind the shoot that allowed me to kind of try a few different things in post, which I don't often get to do because I do my own editing for shoots. But you don't often get to be that creative with night vision photos and introducing a bit of color here and there and stuff like that. So anyway, that shoot was really successful, and it ended up on the BBC, ended up on various different websites. And I'm still finding a few other ones that it's been published on. So that's really exciting to see, because as a photographer, sometimes you have no idea where your work ends up.
No, but that's incredible. And I like how you mentioned it at the beginning, but I like how you take on the challenges where, some people would think, oh, well, I don't know how to shoot at night, so I can't do that job. How do you figure it out? You say yes. How do you figure it out before the actual day?
Yeah, that's basically me in summary. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna do it, and then I'm like, oh, how am I gonna do that? I guess you work with your end goal and you just work backwards. I kind of thought, well, this is the result. How do I get there? And the first thing you're thinking about is, what kit would help me come up with that result? And it is just a matter of research. And I think we're so lucky to live in an age where you can Google almost anything and get closer to your answers. Like, information is just like the key to success in a lot of ways, and that can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming. But if you just dig in a little bit, you'll find something, just like a little strand of, okay, well, I'll try this out. And I was really out of my comfort zone. I went to a video rental company in East London. It was like some dusty old shed, and they hire out kit to TV productions and like all this sort of stuff. And there was this kind of like old guy in the back of the warehouse. He was like, oh, try this camera. And we were sort of just playing around. Like, there's no guarantee it was going to work, but I asked a lot of questions, and I thought, I'm just gonna have to try. And like, having a backup plan with my other camera and another lens and things was sort of how I came about doing that. But I think so much of it comes down to like just not letting the fear get a hold of you. And I think that's like a lesson in all areas of life, really, because if you just let the fear tell you can't do it, or you don't know anything about it, you'll never know, or you won't try. And I think I've read a lot of like books about people who've found success and their journeys and things, and so often the common theme is just don't let the fear take over, and actually like learn from your failures if you do have any. Like, the failures are the things that make you learn, aren't they, ultimately, or they're things that help redirect you. So I just try not to let it put me off, basically.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. You've just got to give it a go, and if it doesn't work, what is the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah, and like, quite often it will
you're
lead
going
you
to
to
die.
something else or something better, like, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In this night shoot for the zoo example, how, like, did you tell the client that you were maybe a little bit worried about getting night shots?
Yeah,
Or,
really
about this backup plan?
Yeah, I was very honest. Like, luckily I know the team well, so they trusted me, and I just said, I'm going to do my absolute best on this. This is quite new to me. I've done some research. I've got a plan. And they just fully trusted me. So I can appreciate that not all clients might have that level of trust or maybe apprehension. But I just think honesty is really quite important across, even in work. Like, I think there's an element of fake it till you make it, but also, you know, you can say we're all just humans, we're all just trying things. And actually, like, if they're decent people, they'll appreciate that actually you're rising to a challenge. And especially if they're creative minded, I think a lot of people will just go, well, let's try it, why not? I think the industry's changed a lot as well. Like, when I started out, I felt very intimidated to say if I couldn't do something, and that's probably made me learn a lot more, because I felt like, as a female photographer surrounded by a lot of males when I started out, certainly, like, I was only assisting male photographers. I couldn't really find many female photographers to be around. And in my first job, actually, I think I was one out of like 14 photographers or something that was a girl at one point. Like, it was pretty nuts ratio. Yeah, it was only when I came to ASOS I was like, oh, that's where they've all been hiding.
All in fashion.
But, you know, that did help me to learn a lot quite quickly, because I thought, I don't want to, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just need to figure it out. And like, I can't remember when this mentality first hit me, but there was something very early on when I started in my career. Like, I couldn't work I don't know, a lighting stand or something, or like maybe I was confused by a lens or something like that. And probably all the above, really, because you got to learn at some point. And I just thought, well, there has to be a way, because it's been designed this way. So there just is an answer. I just got to play around until I find it. And I think they're actually the things that make you, it sticks with you, because you're like, oh yeah, I figured it out by myself. And actually, there's been millions of examples of that in my career. Even to this day, you know, new cameras come out all the time, new kit gets developed. So you're always learning new things. And most of the time, I think, I don't know how to do this, but there has to be a way, so figure it out. And I really like that. I'm quite into problem solving. I get it from my dad.
No, I totally agree with you, though. I remember when I was freelance photographer, I always said yes and then figured it out afterwards. Mostly pushed by my dad at the beginning. He was like, just say yes and figure it out. And I remember there were so many shoots, I was like, I don't know how to do this, but you just got to give it a go and give it a try, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of wish, like, my younger self knew that, like, it's okay to, like, make mistakes in a way, because actually, like, when you get to doing a job for so long, and I actually really enjoy, like, supporting junior photographers and, like, helping them learn certain things that I've forgotten that I even learned that. You know, it's all very second nature, especially in studio photography now, when you just know, you know, the best way of doing things. A lot of the time, where you just, it does come more naturally to you. And there would be a time where I would have, like, really freaked out, like, oh, how do I do this? And now when I come across a photographer who I can see going through something that maybe I've experienced at the beginning of my career, I'm like, oh, well, I want to pass on this information to you. And I learned it through, you know, photographers that were doing it for decades, actually. Like, I was very lucky to shadow some photographers that had been doing it for a really long time. They knew photography, you know, in the analog world, in the non-digital phase of photography. So they, in my eyes, were just incredibly skilled and knowledgeable. So I just try and pass that on as well to other people. And yeah, it helps you remember how much you've learned actually along the way.
Definitely. I think this brings me on to actually your work at John Lewis now. So
Yeah.
even though you're freelance, you do work with John Lewis a lot, and it's more like from a leading the team aspect rather than being the photographer yourself aspect. How do you find, well, first of all, how did you get into that position at John Lewis?
They were already one of my freelance clients, and I got on really well with everyone. I, again, like, kind of got thrown into whatever they asked me to do, and just kind of went feet in first. And I think that, again, that level of, like, enthusiasm, or kind of just like ability to just get on with it is like, that's a massive part of our job, I think. And yeah, they at the time they run on a freelance model. So pretty much all the team is, other than a few like core people in the rest of the studio. And I was just there quite a lot at the beginning. And they said, you know, we're looking for a lead photographer for maybe like a month. Like, would you be interested? And I thought, yeah, absolutely. I love working here. I love the people that I work with. And there was some really interesting opportunities at that time. They had a few different ideas going on with different sets. So, you know, we were shooting fashion, homeware, kids, these lifestyle sets. You know, they have a huge variety there. And, you know, as you now know, that's something I love. So yeah, I got asked to do it, and 1 month sort of just rolled on to a year and a half. So, and again, like, I'm still freelance. I lead the teams. So I start off leading the fashion teams, and now I do home as well. And yeah, like, I've just sort of grown to enjoy helping run everything. And you know, it is a very lucky position to be in, because as you know, I love travel, so I don't want to compromise on not going away. And I certainly didn't go freelance to be positioned in one place, because I just want to keep my job very varied. But they are extremely flexible. They're really, really great to work for. And I've had lots of opportunity to work with all the teams, and also get to still do my other freelance work as well. So yeah, I just try and do everything.
I literally don't know how you fit it all in.
Yeah.
To what extent is your involvement in John Lewis with the teams? You say you're leading the teams. What exactly does that mean? Is it like lighting design and the aesthetics of it?
Yeah, so it's a big team operation. Like, I'm not going to claim to be in charge of everything. I help run the studio so that we, you know, help get involved in what teams are shooting what, and you know, just being really clued up on the shoot guide, for example. So we have a shoot guide, as most e-commerce studios do, and I'm in charge of keeping that up to date and shooting, you know, the new imagery that needs to go into it, or testing ideas for the shoot guys. You know, if there's the art directors want to try something, I will still shoot. I was shooting today. I do shoot still very frequently. But during, you know, peak seasons, we have more teams in, and it means that they need a bit more help potentially, or just support in terms of making sure the sets are all correct, making sure the flow of the shoot goes okay. So I'm on hand to help with you know, how the team is running, and you know, if they've got questions on how to shoot things technically, if their lighting is, you know, off, or they need a little bit of support to make sure that the images look like the references, stuff like that. Anything down to like broken things, or you know, if products don't look right, or like, honestly, every question under the sun, pretty much, I try and do my best. And you know, they all know that I'm freelance. I'm not there as a in-house employee, but I'll do my best based on what I know. And that's what's also really nice in teams that are freelance models. Like, we're all just trying to do the best at our job to help, you know, do what we're hired for to the company that we're working with. So yeah, there is that kind of good understanding of, you know, I'm here to lead, I'm here to help you. I might not know the answer to everything, but I will find out if I don't know the answer, or you know, we'll work through a way of figuring it out, kind of thing.
Yeah, you're kind of that knowledge hub.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, when you are there very regularly, the chances are you probably do know a lot of the answers, especially with freelancers that are in maybe like 1 or 2 days a week, or you know, when they have a lot more clients going on at one time, then they might forget certain things. So it's just like reminders of like, okay, this is how we do it here. You know, make sure you're following these guidelines, things like that. Yeah, I'm just there to answer those questions, I guess.
Yeah, cool. Do you know what? This has been really, really interesting chat, but I know we're running out of time, and I really want to talk about palms in the wild.
Oh,
So Tell me about Palms in the Wild. What is it, and why did you decide to start your own brand as well?
Okay, so let's unfortunately take a trip back to 2020. I know nobody wants to. Um, we're all wondering what we were doing with our lives. Well, I was, and I imagine some other people were kind of like locked at home, thinking, what do I want to do with my life? And, what am I interested in? What am I good at? All those kind of questions. And at the time, I was full time in a company, and I just thought, how could I like push myself? How could I challenge myself? And I've always wanted to work or put my skills together in a way that like really encompasses like travel, photography, yoga, all those elements. And I'm not even joking when I say this. I woke up like bolt upright one morning with this idea to print my images on yoga mats and make them sustainable. And, at the time, it was all the rage to have a small brand, and especially like an eco-friendly, sustainable brand. And it felt like there was a pretty decent market for it. And more than anything, it was just a project. It was like a fun project that I was like, well, I love all these things. I have thousands upon thousands of images that literally just sit on hard drives. And normally, like I now express, like I don't have time to go through them in normal life again. And that was like almost a bit of a like luxury during COVID. We actually had time to sit down and think for like a minute without getting distracted by life.
Yeah,
and
totally.
and that just gave me the chance to actually think about just being creative and just being like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I like designed some yoga mats. So I got onto InDesign, I got onto Photoshop, I played around with some images, and just like thought, oh, this kind of looks cool, like I'm really excited about it. And without, honestly, that same morning that the idea popped into my head, I think it was like a Saturday morning, and obviously we weren't allowed to have a social life, so I was like, well, I've got nothing to do today. um, and I just sat in bed and came up with like 20 odd yoga mat designs, and like absolutely loved doing it. And my twin sister's a graphic designer, so I kind of was talking to her about the idea, and I was like floating some names across to her. And actually, like, we had a name to begin with, Calm Palms, and I was like really into it, and Maddie just hated it. She was like, no, it sounds lame, like we're not doing it. And so for ages we had a shared note on our phones, and we would just like, any ideas that popped into our heads, we would just write down names. And like, I think Palms in the World was like one of the first ones we put down. It was quite early on actually, because we forgot about it. And then we were like looking through it. We were like, there's got to be something in this list. And I was always like, calm palms, calm palms. And I was like, no, I hate it. And you've got to listen to the graphic designers because they know best. And then yeah, and I thought, oh, that's actually quite a cool. I'm always obsessed with palm trees. I mean, you can see like I'm just always got nice little palms going on.
Yeah, I can feel
I just love tropical vibes. I like escapism and all of that. So we sort of played on that. And then palms, I don't think anyone's actually joined the like deep connection of what the words actually mean, but like palms is to do with like it, a palm tree could look like it has like 5 leaves, so it's also like a hand, like a palm of your hand. And then it's like your palms are in the wild because it's on the image, which is like in the wild. And that's what a yoga mat is. You put your palms on the mat, right? We've got
I
really
had not done that connection
well,
myself,
unfortunately,
but I
no
love
one
it even
has.
more now that I know.
I know no one thought, literally no one has made that connection. We like thought it was so clever, but I think it's actually too complex.
A bit too clever, but no, I
Yeah.
love it.
So like we were like, so even like the logo is designed with a palm with 5 leaves as opposed to more, because it's supposed to be like a palm of a hand and all of that sort of stuff. But anyway, nobody's got that. So anyway, like once we got the name, and then I like researched how to produce them, how to get them made and manufactured. And the thing about having a small brand is that it starts off very romantic, and you have all these ideas of like, I'm going to get them made really locally, and they're going to be sourced out of like the best materials. And originally I wanted to get them made out of cork, because cork is the most sustainable material for a yoga mat to be made out of. I found a place in Portugal that I could get them made, and that was like the closest I could get them made to home. And then I realized you can't print on cork because it just rubs away. So that idea quickly went. And then the more I researched, at the time, the only option really was to get them printed on this sustainable, it's like a rubber tree, and then mixed with sustainable materials, so like recycled polyesters, nylons, all of that. And yeah, so got them made, got the prototypes sent over, and honestly, it was like such an exciting project to do, like to really start something and do something that, you know, like you've literally done everything from start to finish pretty much by yourself. Like I did have help, like with my sister. Like I got so many amazing people in my life that I was like, God, yeah, this could be so amazing because I've got all the components that you need to make this successful. And you know, my housemate, one of my best friends, she's a PR, so she kind of got me into magazines and things like that. So that was really cool. And you know, I've like spent my whole career trying to get my images printed in magazines, and to have like an image of something that I've taken and my brand was really, really cool. So it was really exciting. And when I finally launched it, it felt like there was endless opportunities to like get this brand out there, and I was doing lots of markets and stores, and also then I got onto not on the high street, I got into some gyms, like selling in shops and things. So that's it in a nutshell basically. But yeah, it's really hard to make a small brand work, I have to say. And that
was my next question. What's been the hardest part about being a business owner?
Getting your brand out there and getting consistent like customers. Even just the social media stuff, as we've discussed, like I'm not the best at even promoting my actual job on Instagram and social media and stuff like that. Like it's another job. I have a lot of respect for people who do that as a job, and to do that for a brand on top of your own job, like it's a lot. And like I'm in a very lucky position. Like I'm a photographer, so that's half the battle, is having the content, having, you know, images that are always new, always different. And I was actually thinking when I started the brand, like I've got no idea how people have small brands if they're not a photographer or they don't have some sort of experience in doing visuals, because you know that's actually a whole other skill set. I have that, and I still find it really hard to like be posting and doing like all that kind of really fresh, new, exciting, you know, brand imagery. And I suppose maybe the hardest part is that it is my own brand, so I was very protective of how I wanted the brand to be represented at first. And you know, I could have outsourced that to someone else, but I was like, but what if they do a post that I don't like? Or like, you know, unfortunately, as a photographer, I'm going to be like, oh, but I don't really know about that photo. And it's not to say that I'm the best at all. It's because it is such a personal brand to me that actually it's very hard to then know when to step back. So yeah, I'd say that's a very big challenge.
Yeah, that's fair. And what do you think is your favorite part of running it? Like, obviously, seeing it out there in the wild is amazing, but what's your favorite part of the actual, I guess, like operations of running a brand?
Well, I mean, it would be the designing part, to be honest, because that's the part that you can be the most creative. I do really love doing like the shoots for it as well, and like coming up with little ideas, and especially for different themes around Christmas, making like cozy shoots, things like that, or you know, summery outdoorsy shoots. The pricing and stuff is very hard to figure out at first, but once you've got all of that, I love building the website. I love doing like, you know, I again had Maddie's help on like making sure that, you know, the graphic design was looking really polished and everything. But I really enjoyed like making that website, and you know, to look back and think, wow, I did that. Is like, you know, especially when there are how many hundreds of brands out there and they have whole teams building every aspect. So yeah, that's amazing.
No, I think that brand's really, really cool. I really love that you've started your own brand, especially like in COVID where there was nothing going on. You've just made that whole time really productive
Yeah.
and made it work, and it's still going on now. Like, where can people find Palms in the Wild now?
So I did actually stop using the website because I found that it's so much work getting the SEOs up there and everything, and just constantly driving
Yes.
traffic to it. And I was finding a lot of my sales were through Not on the High Street. So they are still on Not on the High Street. I've actually restocked two of the mats. So two of the best sellers.
Awesome. And have you still got Instagram or like TikTok or anything for Palms in the Wild?
Yeah, it's still very much still on Instagram, TikTok as well. I'll be honest, it takes me so long to make TikToks. I haven't done it. I have so much respect for people who put TikToks together, honestly.
Yeah, so do I. It's quite fiddly, isn't it?
Yeah, to be aged, and I find that like the ones that you spend the longest on just don't actually give you the best results. The ones that you spend, I did like a couple of like walking down the street, like really easy going to a yoga class sort of stuff. That got a ridiculous amount of views. The ones where it was very conceptual, very like, and this is the story behind this mat and all of that, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, everything that I've read about social media has said the videos that take you the least time and is like just a, you just do it one day, like not much thought has gone into it. They're always the most popular ones and the ones that you put a load of time and effort into never perform.
Yeah,
It's really weird, isn't it?
yeah.
I guess social media though is about people kind of just want to see um real life and relate to you and all of those things, so I do kind of get it. How did you learn all of the like businessy things? Was that
So again,
YouTube or
we had some help from that side of things as well. Our good friend Liv, she was doing a creative strategy master's for business at the time, and she was like amazing at giving some pointers on like how best to run certain elements of the business and like different ideas, and just having that overall scope of the business side of things. Because I mean, I can't say I'm like an expert in business at all. I literally, it's a whole other world. So I was trying to
yeah.
do like little like webinars on little bits and bobs, especially like marketing and things like that. Um, and then just like I suppose at that time I was really drawn to like entrepreneurs and business owners, and I was like watching a lot of like YouTube videos or listening to a lot of podcasts. So I think
Hmm.
they were always really inspiring. I have a book on my shelf by Holly Tucker, who's the owner
Okay.
on the high street. So she's got like a massive community of small business owners, and she's always giving like amazing advice on like how to run your own brand. And she did a lot of podcasts at the time as well, that were really motivating me to kind of get out there.
Awesome. So I feel like we're coming to the end of our time together, which is really sad because we've covered a lot of ground
I
and
hope
it's been
pretty much.
so interesting.
Ah, glad to hear that.
No, it has, it has. But what are your top three tips for someone trying to break into the industry as a photographer?
I think first of all it'd be like follow your impulse, follow your like what excites you, because like to sustain yourself in this industry, like you have to be excited about it. And it doesn't mean you're waking up every single day like really happy, really like buzzy. It's something within you that you're just like, oh, but I really need to learn more, I really need to like follow this. And I'd say that's always been something about photography for me. Like I always was like, I don't know why, I just like really need to do it and just like follow
Mhm.
what that path leads to you, because you just don't know where it will lead. And I've I never would have thought I would have done as much as I have actually by this point. So that's quite exciting. And then the second thing I would say is like just keep learning, like get as much experience as you can, and think outside the box with it a little bit. Like you don't have to always actually, assisting is something that you're always told to do when you're learning, and whilst there's like a lot of value in it, I found for me it was very restricting. And I found that you can work with some very egotistical photographers, and like I had actually some quite bad experiences assisting, and I reached a point where I was like, this is kind of just a way for photographers to make me feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I actually just want to learn and get to know. And, you know, sometimes that does mean going into a studio at the bottom and, you know, work your way up, but also stand up for what you want to do. Because the reason I actually got to be a photographer is because I was interning in production and I was terrible at it. And I just said to the boss of the company, like, I don't want to do this. I'm really bad at it. And like, that's also, you know, be honest about what you are good at and what you enjoy, because no one's going to buy it if you hate it and you're bad at something. It's not going to be good for anyone. Because I was honest about that, it led him to say, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be a photographer. And then he was like, okay, well, you can do a test and we'll see if you pass, sort of thing. And I did, and that's how I became a photographer. And, you know, I probably could have strung out assisting and like all of those sort of things for years. And to be honest, a lot of assistants do end up just being assistants, and that is because they're very good at what they do. They're like, I know some amazing assistants that actually have no desire to be a photographer because they're so good at being assistants. It's a different job. And I quickly realized, like, I'm actually not learning how to be a photographer. I'm just learning how to be an assistant. So there is a difference. And whilst it gives you experience, like, look outside the box on it. I don't know how many bits of advice I gave there. I feel like it was quite a lot.
Neither do I, but there was a lot jam-packed into that.
One was actually just to have fun. That wants to be my last one.
And where can people find you? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, as is most people. Leah Whitty, my handle. And then I've also got a website, www.leahwhitty.com. So it's hopefully all quite similar to find me. But
amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been literally so interesting, and we've talked about so much stuff. So I hope there's a lot in there for people to take away from this one.
Yeah, I really hope so too. And it's been such a pleasure to come on, and thank you so much for asking me.
Thanks for listening to Get to Know. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Leah as much as I did. I still don't know how she manages to fit everything in, but absolutely loved hearing about how she shoots yoga retreats and zoos, and she's made me want to try my own luck with a drone now. Also, hearing about how she started her own yoga mat business was totally inspiring. I'd love to hear what your favourite part was, so please do leave a review, rate and subscribe. If you want to learn more, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at the Get to Know Podcast. And I'll catch you the same time next week, where I'm getting to know Alexandra Paniakina, the Experience Marketing Director at Pixels. We talk about how she broke into the industry, what she looks for in someone when hiring for her team, the differences between event marketing and event planning, and so much more. This is a really interesting one that you won't want to miss.